And this next guest is somebody who I had the privilege of interviewing during a keynote last week. And what she shared and how she shared it was so impactful to the people who were with us at the WIT Regatta. And I was just teaching on the triangle and healthy friendships. And then we had a conversation on diversity in the workplace. And so please join me in welcoming Kimberly Thompson, who oversees talent management and diversity and inclusion at Edwards Lifesciences. Kimberly, thank you for coming back. This would be your second night in like 7 days in joining me on live.
It's whirlwind. It is so whirlwind. It is so exciting to be with you, Shasta.
You're going to be like, man, being friends with this girl is work.
But it's so much fun. It's so much fun to see you shine, and it's so much fun to, watch you bring others along. Like, you're not just doing this for you, and that's what is exciting for me. Like, you're bringing all your friends along in this process.
Oh, well, I am so grateful for you being on. And I really want to presence the beginning of our conversation with two things. One is I talked about with Paul Montanari at the top of the show about how people of color are reporting higher levels of loneliness in the workplace than white people are. And that's measured in large part by many people of color feeling like they would be alienated under stress, or that they can't bring their whole self to work, and that they're not really being seen or completely accepted and validated in those ways, which is heartbreaking. So I want to hold that statistic here. And then the other thing I kind of want to presence and have you kind of speak to it is something we talked about last week, which is when we're looking at wanting to bring more inclusivity in our workplaces and in our world, one of the most powerful things can be having friendships with people who are different from us. And yet the research shows, I think that, isn't it like 81% of white people don't have a Black friend? I mean, it's like really tragic numbers. And that we just tend to gravitate to people who are like us, and we tend to be segregated in our neighborhoods and in so many places in life, that the workplace should be one of those places where we have the highest likelihood of having more diversity and having the opportunity to connect more. So it feels like there's an intersection here where workplace, friendship, and diversity could all meet. And I would just love to hear your wisdom on kind of your reflection on some of that. Kind of broad.
It can. Here's the thing that I love about you, and what you're bringing to the forefront. The reality is the workplace is different for all of us. And we need to be mindful that, particularly for women of color or people of color, their workplace experience is so different from everyone else's, right? And so then the question becomes, what can we do, right? So that we're all having a rich workplace experience, right? How do we make those connections so that they are, I would say, that they're real and authentic, and we're all benefiting from these relationships? Because I like going to work. I like the people that I work with. And I always have, from every job that I have had, great relationships and great experiences. And by the very nature of what I do, it requires relationship and connection and empathy and sort of understanding and gratitude and grace, right? And we just need to do that more. We need to extend that to each other more and understand that different is not, I'll say, bad, right? I think that our brains are always in fight or flight mode, right? And so we often just make these sort of, I would say, blanket sort of assumptions about people. We stay in our sort of comfort zone instead of taking the risk and spending time with someone that does not look like us, that does not live in our neighborhood, but yet they sit across from me, or we're on the same team. We do need to take the time out to get to know that person.
Yeah. And I love the title of my first book is Friendships Don't Just Happen, which, and I think of it's similar in this moment, because we can have a diverse workplace, and hopefully our leaders and our HR people and stuff are hiring that, but we could be in the most diverse place, and it doesn't guarantee that we will build diverse friendships, because they don't just happen to us. We have to be intentional and practice. We have to practice positivity, consistency, and vulnerability with people who are different from us in the workplace. And you shared a little bit, some highlights, and we don't have time for, I wish we could do the whole conversation all over, but I think it's online somewhere, but maybe just summarize what jumped out at you last week when we were talking about which of these 3 requirements do you feel like would move us forward the most if we were more thoughtful in building diverse friendships? Which one of these 3 requirements do you think we could focus on that would make the biggest difference?
I'm going to start with consistency. Just showing up, being intentional, put it on the calendar, right? Yep. So when I first started working at the company that I'm at now, I met a woman when I first got there. She was and is probably my most unlikely friend. She set up time on the calendar, and we meet for an hour every single month. And when I first started meeting with her, I was like, what am I going to talk to her about? She's older than me. She doesn't look like me. She's white. She's been with this company for many years. But I got to tell you, I look forward to that conversation.
Oh,
I look forward
beautiful.
to that. Because we talked about everything other than work. Yeah. We talked about dessert, what she was doing with her grandkids, how she was remodeling her home. We had so much fun in that hour.
Oh,
and
that's so good.
The one thing that I realized what made that relationship great for me was she accepted me. Yeah. I was new to the company, and I felt like I belonged because she took the time out. Now, she put the time on the calendar.
Yeah.
She got to know me. And so within that hour, it was like we were forced to get to know one another.
Yeah.
I had to come ready to that meeting, or that time of connection, prepared to have a conversation. I had to work on my own sort of skills to sort of connect. And I think that consistency is key, right? Showing up, reaching out, calling, texting, whatever we need to do. And then I think the other piece to kind of lean in is, of course, vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Because we need to get to know each other. Yeah,
we need to know one another. We need to ask questions. We need to get curious. We need to have courage with one another. Like, hey, girl, you can move beyond. Hey, girl, where'd you get those shoes?
I love it. Well, you illustrate it so well, because if we don't have consistency, if we don't actually ever interact, we can't get to know each other, which is vulnerability. And then it needs to feel good for us to want to repeat it. So that example you gave is the 2 of you doing those 3 things over and over and over. And that's the only way if there was anything I could kind of like, one thing I could say to everybody is, I think the most powerful thing about understanding how relationships are built is that you realize it's not something that it's not just finding the right person. It's not like she was the perfect person for you, and that the 2 of you would have picked each other out if we didn't work together, and that you were just meant to be best friends. It's that the 2 of you chose to practice these 3 things, and by practicing these 3 things, you can't not bond. And so therefore you're now building a relationship with somebody, which is really beautiful.
She was my biggest cheerleader. Positive.
Yeah.
Right? I could go to her, share with her what I was working on, whether it was my birthday. We began to know some things about each other, and I was able to celebrate her. She was able to celebrate me. So when you think about the triangle, it was working. It is working. It is true. I've lived that out. And I think that we have to, especially in this day and age, I think that we should be encouraged, right, to take those steps of courage and step out of our comfort zones, because friendships provide us, especially friendships that are different, they provide us, with another point of view. We can be empathetic. We can learn how to listen to someone else more deeply. We become more self-aware. Friendships provide us with so much, and we don't realize they give us a different perspective. They help expand our minds. They really do enrich our lives more than more than what we can think of. And which you were alluding to, with the loneliness, right, and not feeling like we belong in the workplace, right, the impact of that, the health benefits alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
health
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah. And we see the consequence of that for those who are feeling left out in the workplace.
Yes,
We see people of color taking a hit on the stress and the health and all that stuff. And that's something that we could do. We all need to be caring about. This is where I'm like, friendships can change the world. Like
yes,
if we
yes,
like
yes.
imagine, I mean, it just breaks my heart to see numbers of people, I mean, of anybody who's feeling lonely, but when we see people of color saying, and especially when we live in a world right now where we all are having a reconciliation with our systemic racism. And I just think if we all loved and were close to somebody who was different from us, this would be an entirely different conversation. You know, this would be a game changer if we could say this is hurting. And we know racism's hurting white people too. And because we're missing out on so much by not being
Sure.
open and like open inviting and but if we could actually see that it's hurting people we love and know, and it would just be such a different conversation. So I feel like we all need to make a much bigger intentional effort to be building relationships with people who don't look like us. So it's crazy how much we've been trained to think commonality is what bonds, and it is not the case.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh.
We can do ourselves better. I like to think of friendships as a part of our self-care, right?
Hmm.
And we don't, especially in this age, right? Sheltering in
Yep.
place, being
Yep.
at home, more we can do. I have had more really great conversations via, I guess, Zoom with people that did not look like me.
Mm.
Invited them into my home. They get to meet my kids. I get to learn something about them, something that I didn't know. And it has expanded my mind, um, and really it's also expanded my knowledge about them. Right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not just the person that I work with. Now I'm
Yep.
learning more about some deeper things about them and their family and maybe even their own life experiences and how they're feeling about, the current time. And as a result, there's connection, greater connection. And that for me is exciting. It's exciting to get to know my coworkers that way as well.
Oh. Well, Kimberly, I just want to leave you with the biggest blessing and thank you. I just want to leave that your work in diversity and inclusion is so powerful that you are helping an organization not just get the benefit of diversity, but that you're spending your nights and days thinking about how to include people and leave them feeling belonging is just what a beautiful mission. And I just thank you so much for the good work you're doing in this world. And I promise I won't ask you to be on any more live streams for the next couple of weeks, but thank you so much for coming and inspiring all of us on this topic tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me be your guest and your friend.
Oh, I love it, love it, love it. It's my privilege. Thank you. Have a good night.